Let's switch gears to talk with Gary now about colorant application technology. There's so many different approaches, and I'm sure many mulch producers try and maybe graduate from one to the next. Talk to me about these different methods of applying colorant to mulch, and what are the different pros and cons to these approaches?
Sure. So you've got your dedicated color machines, and there's a couple of different types on the market. There's a kind of more old school style, be more of a high power paddle style mixer. Does a great job mixing. A lot of the market has gone towards more of a trommel style machine, where more of the tumbling of a drum. It takes a lot less power just to turn a drum and let the material mix itself. All right, so those are real common as far as standalone machines. A lot of guys get started by using a machine they already have, right? Maybe refitting their grinder, their finished grinder, with some sort of color pump and water valving type system, which again, it mixes well. You've got a lot of power going in there, does a good job mixing. Just to talk about maybe the retrofit stuff first, as far as pros and cons. The trommel style machine is going to use a lot less power. Both mix well. So as far as water colorant efficiency, outside of having some fancier high-end automation, they're both going to do a good job there. There are inefficiencies related to some of those very, very basic controls, right? You're doing a bit of guessing as far as what speed to set your color pump, how much water you need. There's the guessing factor of how much material are you actually feeding into the machine, right? So there's tends to be a lot of guessing going on when you're doing that. It's understandable that someone doesn't want to go buy a standalone color machine when they're first getting into it.
Right.
But then again, they're in a new market maybe, and they're competing with someone who does have that high-end, highly efficient machine. So it can be a little tricky navigating how to compete and get yourself into the industry there.
A big pro is the investments substantially less to just modify your existing machine. The con is really the inefficiency. It's a lot more guessing, and to overcome that, you're applying maybe excessive colorant to make
potentially.
Sure. Yeah. The other thing I see with trommels too is talking about sizing material, consistent in, consistent out, and the same goes with coloring. And it's really hard for a hopper feed system that dumps directly into the trommel or screening mechanism to feed consistently. You get lumps and chunks that will fall in. You get a surge in material, and all of a sudden you get a little batch of it. You didn't get enough colorant. To overcome that, you got to apply more colorant. And so having a really consistent feed system is another challenge with...
And having a feed system at all is a plus, because we'll talk about some of the standalone systems and what can happen when you don't have a feed system, right? So the trommel having its own belt feeder, you keep the hopper full, loader drives away for the next bucket, and it does its thing. And it is doing a decent job of dosing, but like you said, it can certainly be inconsistent. A lot of surges, highs and lows. So then to shift gears to the standalone units, right? So where are we going to benefit there? So there are, when you have a standalone system, oftentimes, or at least with our line of equipment, we've put a lot of effort into the automation.
Taking the guessing work out.
You're really taking the guessing work out. We'll talk a little more about that in a minute. But to be able to input a recipe into the controls of the machine, right? Everyone measures water in gallons per cubic yard. That's just what they know. And they like to measure the colorant in pounds per cubic yard. You could imagine just setting a color pump to a speed you think is about right, and just feeding the machine, trying to keep it full. There's some trial and error, and after doing it for a while, you get a pretty decent feel for it. But the accuracy nowadays with some of the automation available is really great. I'm talking truly set it, forget it, and you're really, taking the operator out of that guessing game. You're kind of taking them out of the equation altogether, other than just keep the machine fed. And not that there's not great operators out there. There are, but even for the best operator, it can be a real challenge to be efficient.
And for a lot of mulch producers, when they figure out who that operator is running their colorant system, they usually got a job for life, because they're a huge factor and the efficiency gain.
But it doesn't always work out that way.
No, yeah, we don't always get
Right. So if you're training a new guy,
Yeah.
right, that's a big challenge. And just to talk a little bit about cost, right, burning 40, 50 gallons of diesel an hour at a grinder seems expensive.
Yeah.
But Brian could attest, the most expensive part of this process is your colorant usage, right? So in a big high-end model, right? So our biggest model offered will color in the ballpark, right? Depending on material, ballpark 500 yards an hour. In that sort of situation, with today's pricing, $1,500 an hour plus in colorant use,
right.
that's a lot,
Yeah.
right? Do you want your loader operator determining whether you're spending $1,500 an hour or $2,000 an hour?
Right.
Right. So just touching on, right, another type of standalone color units available and been successful for a long time, plenty of success, is a paddle style mixer, right? We've all seen them. There's a lot of them out there. Pros and cons there, right? Does a good job mixing, plenty of power available, high torque, plenty of power. But what comes with using a lot of power is using a lot of wear.
Yeah.
Right. High wear costs, potential damage, right? You get a log in there that's not supposed to be in there.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep that chunk of log out of your finished mulch pile. You got loaders running around, pushing material around. It happens. And a trommel style machine, it's going to go in one end, out the other.
Right.
It's going to tumble around in the drum.
Sure.
It's going to come out poorly colored
Right.
chunk of wood, right?
Archie talked about contamination earlier, right? You throw a cinder block or a piece of firewood or a 6-inch boulder into a pug mill, if you will, or an internal mixing coloring machine with paddles and shovels, you're going to break something.
Right.
If you throw that same piece of contamination in a trommel style coloring machine, it's simply going to roll out the other side color. It ain't breaking anything.
Right. Exactly.
Right.